It was a cold, snowy weekend in the Boston suburb of Canton, Massachusetts. Everyone was preparing for a blizzard that was supposed to start in the overnight hours of Friday, January 28, 2022 to Saturday, January 29th. John O'Keefe was a Boston police officer who was raising his niece and nephew because of a family tragedy. With the incoming weather, it was clear the kids' activities would be postponed that weekend. So, John hit a couple of the local bars on Friday night with his girlfriend, Karen Reed, and some friends. First, it was C.F. McCarthy's. Then they went across the street to the Waterfall. At the Waterfall, he met up with a group of people, including fellow Boston police officer Brian Albert. When the Waterfall closed at midnight, a bunch of folks from the bar headed over to Brian Albert's for an after party. When the Alberts returned home, there was a group of younger people already there celebrating Brian Jr.'s birthday. It was a house full of people. John O'Keefe died that night. Prosecutors say Karen Reed backed over him on purpose with her car and left him to die on the front lawn. Yet, no one saw it or heard it happen. Meanwhile, the defense says John O'Keefe was ambushed inside the home, pulverized, and left on the yard to die in the cold. Yet, no one says they saw John in the house or heard or saw any confrontation. It's a murder with two theories and no eyewitnesses to the killing. Tonight, the continuing testimony of the witness the defense says was in the middle of the alleged conspiracy, someone who the prosecution says heard Karen Reed confess, Jennifer McCabe. We'll break down her testimony as we continue our investigation into the tragic death of Officer John O'Keefe. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And this was, I'm a broken record. It's another big day, but this is an extremely important day, perhaps the most contentious day yet of this trial involving Karen Reed. And on the top of it all is a Google search. And I want to go back in time a little bit to the first trial on court TV where a Google search was a key piece of evidence. It was a case where a guy named McCabe McDermott, who happened to be in Massachusetts, was claiming legal insanity. Yet, prosecutors found on his computer a search on how to fake mental illness. Now, this was many years ago. Many of you may remember that trial. But for me and for Court TV, it was the first time that a Google search was like the centerpiece of the trial. And now it's sort of ordinary, right? It's part of evidence, your digital footprint, what you're searching on your computer, what you're looking at on your phone, all becomes part of all these trials. But now we get to this case involving Karen Reed, and we get to, I think, the biggest Google search since McCabe McDermott, which is a search done by Jennifer McCabe. And the question isn't really what did she search, it's when did she Google? What was the time of this search? The search is for how long to die in the cold. Now, she says she did it in the morning because when they were at the scene and they found John O'Keefe, Karen Reed is telling her, search hypothermia, how long it takes to die in the cold. That's what she's saying happened, and that's why she says she searched it. And that's what the experts for the prosecution are going to say about the time. It's in the morning when John O'Keefe is found in the cold. But the defense says, no, it happened way before then, more than 3 hours before that, 2:27 a.m. And that's what their experts are going to say. And this is important because if it's at 2:27, it's a much different scenario. John O'Keefe's body hasn't been discovered. So if you're searching this at 2:27, it's because you're curious about what's going to happen to a guy who was just put out on the front lawn in the cold. So it's about when the search was done, not exactly what the search was of, because there's sort of an agreement there about what the search was, right? Now, this search, this alleged 2:27 a.m. search, is what really launched the Free Karen Reed movement. It's a big part of the defense, but it's really the cornerstone of the movement as well. And now, after what happened in court today and what this jury heard, I think one of the questions a lot of people are asking are, did these Karen Read supporters, did they go too far in what they did? Because the allegations from Jennifer McCabe on the witness stand today became evidence in the case about what she says happened to her and her family at the hands of Karen Read supporters. And it was interesting because now the jury's hearing about what the Karen Read supporters are saying and doing, yet there's a court order to keep them 200 feet away from the courthouse. With all this happening, the cross-examination of Jennifer McCabe today, it got very personal. It was very, very contentious. Let's take you inside the courtroom.
You didn't tell Sergeant Lank that my client said I hit him. What you said was that my client said, I hope I didn't hit him. Correct?
No.
You thought that Read may have made these same statements in front of a police officer, but she was not sure, meaning you were not sure. Correct?
I was not sure if she made what the police officers may have heard. That report is his recollection. My recollection is I told him that she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. We received letters, we received emails, we received calls. People drive by our house. There was a rolling rally outside of my house where people just screamed at us. They take pictures of our children. They took a picture of my daughter and put semen on it and said property of some named blogger that I think the defense is very familiar with.
So you were upset about the public outrage concerning your family's involvement in the death of John O'Keefe.
I was outraged because I am a state witness that is being tortured because of lies.
Because of public outrage concerning your family's involvement in the death of a police officer, correct?
No, it's a social media witch hunt.
Did you, in fact, use a phrase to Google search how long it takes for someone to die of extreme temperatures?
I did in the morning at the request of your client.
Okay. And what phrase did you use?
I'm not sure.
Are you telling me you don't remember what Google search you put in?
Karen was screaming, my hands were shaking, and she was saying, Google hypothermia, how long does it take to die in the cold?
And what phrase did you put in your phone? I'm just asking you to say it.
Why don't you show me it?
How about this? Hoss long to die in cold. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it's been everywhere.
Why does that sound so familiar?
Because you put it out in social media.
You made that search at 2:27 a.m. because you knew that John O'Keefe was outside in your sister's lawn dying in the cold, didn't you?
Absolutely not. I did not make that search at that time, no.
The next morning, after John was discovered, after 6 a.m., that you had an incriminating search on your phone, didn't you?
Absolutely not.
And then, of those 3 searches, one of them ended up deleted. Isn't that right?
I never deleted any search.
Now, you were asked some questions with regard to the Google search. Again, that was initiated after 6 a.m. Why again?
Because Miss Read asked me to Google how long to die from hypothermia. She said, Google hypothermia, Google how long it takes to die in the cold. She was shaking me, screaming at me to do it.
He dated a lot of people. My husband, whenever he would go on a date with somebody, he would have my husband come meet them, sort of say, like, what do you think? And he had a couple of girlfriends that were very nice.
So you answered the phone sometime right around 5 a.m. and you described to the jury sort of what the content of that conversation was.
I answered the phone, and she said, John's dead. Kerry, Kerry, Kerry. And then she hung up. And she said, I'm afraid John might be dead. he might have gotten hit by a plow. He did not come home last night. Karen said that she remembered leaving him at Waterfall. And Jen said, no, I saw you pull up to my sister's house. And then at some point in the conversation, she said, what about my taillight? What about my taillight? And I looked, and there was a piece missing.
All right, let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, who's live from outside the courthouse where it's all happening in Dedham, Massachusetts. Matt, great to see you tonight. What another day. Let's talk about Jennifer McCabe's cross-examination. This was contentious. This was heated. It seemed personal.
It really did, Vinny. Nice to see you. And it was the moment that we were all waiting for. Jen McCabe, a key witness for the Commonwealth, on the stand 3 days. 2 of those days in a row, she's on cross-examination. And yes, very heated. The jurors listening very closely. So was Karen Reed when she was on the stand today. And it also appeared like she didn't even want to answer the question as to what she typed that day. Regardless of what time it happened, 2:27 or after John O'Keefe's body was found, this is what she said on the stand.
Did you, in fact, use a phrase to Google search how long it takes for someone to die of extreme temperatures?
I did in the morning at the request of your client.
Okay. And what phrase did you use?
I'm not sure.
Really?
Correct. I was.
2.5 years of this, you don't know the phrase that you used?
Objection, Your Honor.
There's so many lies and misconceptions on social media.
And Vinny, there was a lot of people that also brought up what you just did about people thinking that this was actually personal, how she's pointing the finger at Alan Jackson, who's asking the questions, and also looking over at the defendant at the table over there and saying that she confessed. And also, she made a point here where she says Karen Reed knew exactly what we were going to find at 34 Fairview. That's why she wanted to go there. Take a listen.
You were asked on that morning, January 29th, 2022, as you drove to the location and ultimately to 34 Fairview, what ultimately happened. And your testimony was, as you approached, my client was searching frantically for John O'Keefe.
I don't believe I said she was searching frantically for John O'Keefe.
Searching frantically?
She was screaming frantically in the back seat and texting in the back seat.
Was she just sitting there, curled up in the back seat, sucking her thumb, or was she searching out the window?
She was screaming between Kerry and I. So I'm not really sure how she saw John over here when her head is up here screaming and then looking down and texting.
Was the whole point of that trip, Miss McCabe, to search for John?
It was, because she knew where he was.
The whole point of that trip was to look for him, correct?
She directed us to go to 34 Fairview.
The whole point of the trip was to look for John, correct?
At 34 Fairview, where Karen said to go.
And things in that courtroom were also heated when she was addressing the fact that she says her family has been harassed and other witnesses of the Commonwealth. And also when she was questioned about her relationship with the Proctors, how many times she's talked to them, and how many times she got together with Kerry Roberts.
Let's talk about Kerry Roberts because she also testified today.
Yeah, that was a big moment. It wasn't a long testimony. She was on the stand. She was very emotional at times, and she was really talking about the loss of her friend. She knew John O'Keefe for many years before he died, before he dated Karen Reed. And then, you know, we had heard so much about her, of her being a talker, what she said before and after John O'Keefe was found, what she said about Karen Reed and their relationship, her thoughts on that. But we heard that from Jen McCabe. I want you to hear it.
She said something like, John really loved Amy, and in my eyes, Karen was just a babysitter with benefits.
She said that that was what horrified her, Jen McCabe, so we were all waiting for what that answer might be. Don't remember Kerry talking about it on the stand, but what she did talk about was very important as well, because she's there as one of the 3 women that find John O'Keefe at 34 Fairview after they're searching for him. She's talking about what Karen Reed had told her, allegedly, and also the statements that she's made. And then she makes the statement as to what was found underneath John O'Keefe and what the grass or the ground looked like. Take a listen.
Mr. O'Keefe is taken from where he is by the paramedics to an ambulance, correct?
Yes.
And as he's being taken off the ground, what, if anything, did you observe in that area?
His phone was under him, and it was grass.
Now, as far as the grass that you observed, how was that in relation to sort of the rest of the area where Mr. O'Keefe was?
Everything else had snow.
Now, all of the attorneys ask all of the first responders and the people that were at the scene the conditions when they left the house, when they arrived at the house. So all of that is now in the minds of the jury as they're piecing together their version of events. And another thing that was really important with this particular witness is she was talking about the fact that the fact that she wasn't crossed. And Alan Jackson was asked about that at the courthouse steps here after court today, and he said there was no need to cross her because she was a better witness for the defense than she was for the Commonwealth. We would have called her had they not.
Interesting. Okay, 1 or maybe 2 more witnesses I want you to talk about. We heard their names early on. The Sullivan sisters. Who are the Sullivan sisters?
Longtime friends of John O'Keefe and the O'Keefe family. So the Sullivan sisters, they were both on the stand today. Really key testimony. So this was Lauren and Marietta Sullivan, both family friends of John O'Keefe. John was godfather of Lauren's son, and they testified about a fight that happened that they witnessed between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe weeks before his death over the New Year's holiday in Aruba.
After Mr. O'Keefe said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister," I said, "Hi, nice to meet you." That's when Miss Reed's head snapped up, and she very loudly told me to go myself across the lobby. And I said, "Yeah, you too," and walked away. I went straight up to my older sister, Laura, who was out to dinner with the couple the night before. I went up to her and I looked at her and I said, "John O'Keefe's girlfriend?" And she looked at me and said, "Karen?" And I said, "Yeah, you guys like her?" She said, "Yeah, she's okay." And I said, "Well, she sucks." So my sister pulled me aside from everybody and asked if the night that I got into the altercation with Miss Reed in the lobby, if I was making out with Mr. O'Keefe.
How did you respond?
That I absolutely was not.
Okay, so we might hear more about this storyline and a possible motive that's being put forth by the Commonwealth here, Trouble in Paradise, from O'Keefe's niece and nephew, who were also on that trip. They have yet to be called to the stand, Vinny.
All right. Matt Johnson, big day. Thank you so much. When we come back, we'll bring in our trial insiders and take a closer look at all of this evidence and what it means and how it's playing. Plus, coming up next hour. Have prosecutors proven 3 murders? Or has the defense raised a reasonable doubt on 1, 2, or all 3 charges that could result in the death penalty for the doomsday prophet?
And what Dr. Raven is going to say is that there's no indication that this is either a homicide or any other crime, and that the only conclusion she can come to is you can't determine what the cause of death was.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
Ms. McCabe, the reason you deleted that 2:27 a.m. call is because you realized that if you were caught Googling how long it takes for a person to die in the cold 3.5 hours before John's body was found, that would incriminate you, wouldn't it?
Objection.
The objection sustained.
Did you delete that search because you knew that you would be implicated in John O'Keefe's death if that search was found on your phone?
Objection.
Paula, could you answer that, please?
I did not delete that search. I never made that search at 2:23. I never would have left John O'Keefe out in the cold to die because he was my friend that I loved.
What a big moment, important moment for both sides of this case, important moment for the jury. I mean, this is part of the basis how they're going to figure out whether or not this search was done at 2:27 or if it was done when they found John O'Keefe. This Google search by Jennifer McCabe. Let's take a look at more of this back and forth, this cross-examination about this extremely significant Google search.
You see this first search that says "Hostlong to die in cold"?
I do.
What's that time?
You've got the, it's right over at 2:27
AM or PM?
a.m.
Ms. McCabe, you made that search at 2:27 a.m. because you knew that John O'Keefe was outside in your sister's lawn dying in the cold, didn't you?
Absolutely not.
All right, let's bring in our trial insiders. Joining me tonight, Karen Reed supporter, creator of the Justice for Officer John O'Keefe and Karen Reed Facebook page. You saw him inside the courtroom today, Nick Rocco. Also with us, the YouTuber behind Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin Lenahan, and criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr. Great to have all of you here. Let me begin with you, Nick, inside the courtroom. You're watching this moment. You're watching this critical cross-examination. And my understanding is this search at 2:27, this alleged 2:27 search, is the reason why people like you have fallen behind and supported initially Karen Reed.
Yeah, absolutely. When it came out in April of 2023, there was an absolute public opinion on this case, and they weren't happy with the fact that this was going to continue to move forward, considering the fact that she Googled it at 2:27. So an issue today that Adam Lally had brought up with Ms. McCabe was he asked her, did you turn your cell phone off at night? And she said, correct. So if she had turned her phone off, then how did she wake up to a phone call at 4:53 from Karen Reed? But let's get into this Google search real quick. So search number 1, Hostlong to die in cold. Search number 2 being how long T.I. died in CIKD. Now the issue with this, and if they bring the pictures up, when you Google search these, right under both Google searches, not only do you get the same result, but it also says showing results for how long to die in cold. So no matter how Jennifer McCabe spelled it at 6:23 or 6:24, she was going to get the same results. So now there was no reason for that second Google search at 6:24. The only reason for that Google search was to match up to her 2:27 Google search, and hopefully by her deleting it, which the Celebrite data shows it was deleted, they wouldn't find it. So it's going to be interesting what the experts have to weigh in on this.
Well, Kevin Lenahan, how do you see this? Because when this information first came out, you had an opinion about it, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. When Turtle Boy first broke this article on April 18th, I looked at this conspiracy and said, well, there's a lot of things that make no sense. 11 people in the house being silent, all the police and medical examiners that had to be involved, putting a dying or dead man on your own lawn. But then there's on the left, on the other hand, is 2:27, right? And I thought, like Nick, that data is just data. But then the state came out and said they have an independent expert that showed it, that they had another explanation for it. And now we've seen we're going to get those explanations from Celebrite and this and that. But I spent the last year catching up on what data is. And data is not just data. Data is very complicated. And you can't ever just rely on one little piece of data. So we know that the paramedic inside the ambulance heard Karen ask almost the exact same question. So, and I can't think of any reason why Jen would make this search at 2:27, not look at any of the results at 2:27, and then strangely make those same searches twice more in the squad car at the scene under stress, and then have it be the coincidence of the paramedics asking for the same thing. So to me, 2:27 is just no longer a factor in this case.
Joseph Krowski Jr., your thoughts about this issue, but also about the way it played out in court today through cross-examination, something that you've done for years.
Yeah, so Vinny, you have to love the theater, don't you? Look, Alan Jackson's a good lawyer. I'm not going to dispute that, but I think he went a little too long and got a little too loose. They flew him out here from Hollywood, California, and a 6th grade school teacher met him in the center of the ring and went toe-to-toe with him. I think he lost control of the witness, and she was able to augment her answers, and she was actually able to tell her story. Now, good cross-examination is about the lawyer telling his story. I do think he lost control. It is clear that Jen McCabe has had it, and she made a conscious decision to fight. On that how long to die in the cold, what corroborates Jen McCabe's version of the story is she also Googled Ozone basketball, the team that her daughter had been invited to play in, at 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the morning without any difficulty spelling it. She very clearly and succinctly explained why she had a problem spelling it, because it was 6:20 in the morning. Karen Reed was hysterical. Jen McCabe is MS, and it was cold out. And again, to Kevin's point, there is the corroboration of that EMT that said Karen Reed was saying how long to die in the cold. Final point on this. The state isn't just calling an independent expert. We deal with experts back and forth all the time, and sometimes they're just a wash. But as I understand Adam Lally, they were actually able to obtain the person that wrote the source code in the software for Cellbrite. That's going to be a really tough expert to counter. So again, let's wait and see. Pretty amazing, though. 2 years, 180 witnesses, and it might come down to one Google search. One other point, you said that most famous Google search. I have to disagree with you. I think the Casey Anthony Google search probably was the most famous Google search.
No.
But you're still doing great, Vinny.
It was on Firefox.
All right. It's
gotcha.
corrected.
Checkmate. Let me ask you, Nick, are you bothered, or do you believe, number one, that she was searching Ozone basketball at the same time? And does that make sense to you that on one hand, she's thinking about her daughter's basketball team, and on the other hand, she's thinking about murdering John O'Keefe?
Well, from what I'm understanding, this Ozone basketball search happened nanoseconds before the Google search happened. So as far as the Ozone basketball, I mean, to say she's checking it at 2 in the morning because her daughter got invited to a team after just drinking all night, she didn't go to bed. That was number one. Her Apple Health data shows that. So why is she looking up a basketball tournament or a game that her daughter's supposed to join specifically around the time she did this Google search? Now, I'm not saying Ozone basketball wasn't already on her browser, but also a Google was up too, and she Googled that at 2:27. Just for the sole fact that she said she turned her phone off that night is a lie. We know it's a lie because she wouldn't have got that phone call from Karen Reed. So why is she saying her phone was off? And why won't she say the words "Hoss long to die" on the stand? She won't answer the question. She won't say it. After 2 years, she doesn't know what she Googled.
Yeah, Kevin, what did you think of that moment? I thought that was kind of awkward because, I mean, the whole world that's watching this trial knows the search. I am sure she knew the search, but didn't want to give Alan Jackson anything.
Yeah, she was being defiant because he's just trying to force her to say the words. And I think today, was an absolute, especially with the Kerry Roberts, but also with Jen, was an absolute disaster. I feel like Nick is a really good card player playing a really bad hand now, and today's the day he learned how bad the hand was. I mean, this is just not going to go anywhere. Think about this. We learned that Jen and Kerry both voluntarily turned over their phones to the troopers, the same troopers that were told are running this cover-up. So why are they getting their phones? Why are innocent? And why would people, if they're part of a conspiracy, be turning over their phones? It wouldn't. And the moral of the story is, I guess, never turn over your phone, even if you're innocent, because you're going to get a slippery defense team to find some random piece of data and then get through social media create a conspiracy.
Nick, did you have it looks like you have a response to that.
Jen handed her over her phone after she deleted 20 phone calls in the Google search, and not only that, the state police allowed her to delete messages with her kids, one of the kids being one who picked up Colin. So we would have known, because I'm sure they talked about when Colin was picked up, and I'm sure they told each other that. So the fact that the state police just said, yeah, you could delete those. Anything else you want to delete too before I check your phone? I mean, come on, that's not okay.
Colin wasn't part of the conspiracy theory until a year later. So,
Joseph, could it be a problem for the prosecution? Was she too combative? Was she not likable? Or was Alan Jackson too tough on her? Because I know you've been accused of being too tough sometimes, too.
Yeah, I was lambasted on your show, I think, a year ago, almost to this date, for being too tough. So, and I give Alan Jackson credit, right? He knows the temperature of the room. He thinks he has permission to go where he's going. I'll tell you why Jen McCabe didn't say those words, because that single phrase is responsible for turning her life absolutely upside down. So sometimes it's not just what a witness is saying, but it's how they're saying it. So I think her anger and her passion has to come off as authentic. And again, this is 2024. This is a strong, intelligent woman, and she was fierce up there. So with me, it played well because I like a good fight. I don't know how the jury saw that.
All right, all our guests are staying with us. When we come back, after the testimony today, there are some questions. Did the Karen Reed supporters take it too far? We'll see what Nick Rocco and everyone else has to say when we come back.
Why'd you go to Michael Proctor's house in September of 2023?
We are two mothers that are being viciously terrorized and harassed by social media. Things that were stated in this courtroom and allegations that were made have torn our lives upside down. I am a state witness that is being tortured because of lies.
Because of public outrage concerning your family's involvement in the death of a police officer, correct?
No, it's a social media witch hunt.
This is now evidence in the case. This is now evidence in the case through the testimony of Jennifer McCabe, what she alleges has happened to her as a result of all this, her family being terrorized in Canton, Massachusetts. Let's bring back in our guests, our insiders. Nick Rocco, Karen Reed supporter, Joseph Krowski Jr., criminal defense attorney, at one point represented Colin Albert, and Kevin Lenahan from the YouTube channel Yellow Cottage Tales. So what I want to do is play another piece of that testimony relative to the allegations of what she and her family have gone through. I want to watch that together. Let's take a look.
We receive letters, we receive emails, we receive calls. People drive by our house. There was a rolling rally outside of my house where people just screamed at us. They take pictures of our children. They took a picture of my daughter and put semen on it and said property of some named blogger that I think the defense is very familiar with. So that is why myself and Elizabeth Proctor got together. Michael Proctor was not home. We are two mothers trying to get through the unthinkable together.
So the question I have, Nick, after all this comes out in court now and these allegations, number one, do you agree with her representation of what happened? And if you know what happened, I don't even know if you were at any of these things. And do you think some members of the Karen Reed movement, the supporters, have gone too far?
So first thing I would like to say is, I don't condone harassment in any way. I was not at that rolling rally, but as far as the Free Karen Reed movement and supporters go, everybody that I've encountered has been nothing but nice and very genuine in this case. As far as the harassment that these people are receiving, I think it is an outcry of the public that wasn't happy with this Google search. Now, I can't speak for everybody because, there's always going to be a few that go above and beyond as far as, Facebook messages or, sending letters. But it's very interesting how all of this harassment Jen McCabe is saying she received started in April of 2023. And then in June 2023 was the first time ever under oath on paper, Jennifer McCabe told the federal grand jury, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. That was the first time ever. But it also goes both sides. Elizabeth Proctor has called multiple people's jobs and actually got one of them fired because people were criticizing her husband online. I've received bad reviews on my business, and I know many others have as well. It may not be the extent of the harassment they're getting, but it's on both sides. It's just that, Jen McCabe is in court and she's able to, apparently put this into evidence. And one thing I did need to mention real quick to Joe was that, Colin maybe has received some harassment, and I know you had stated this before, but you also vouched for him the other day saying that Colin Albert has never been in a fight. And I just need to correct you that there is now a video online of Colin Albert in a fist fight. So I wanted to make that clear that
it's play fighting, but
it's a fist fight.
Joseph, I'll let you go first, so you can respond to that if you would like. But also, what are your thoughts now? Is there any irony here or something? Because now this is evidence in the case. What is happening between the protesters, the Karen Reed movement, and some of these witnesses in the case, yet the protesters are kept away from the courthouse, 200 feet away. What do you think of the entire situation and what it means for this trial and what it means for this jury now?
So, look, our country, thrives on vigorous and robust debate. No question about that. But this has gone way beyond that. And when Nick talks about both sides, this is really, really one-sided. And what's unique about this case is you actually have the defendant and defense team in full collaboration endorsing the tactics used by some of the online personalities. And it goes way beyond harassment. It goes to showing up at people's homes, showing up at their businesses, showing up at high school sporting events. To what end? What is the purpose? To intimidate these people, to harass these people, to prejudge these people, to make their lives miserable? So I'm all about a good, robust debate. I'll debate Nick any day of the week. I actually like Nick. I enjoy this show. I enjoy debating the merits. But what's been done on here, and if you look at the vitriol and the vile and the name calling and criticizing people for their looks and for their socioeconomic status, it's just really an uneducated, unnecessary part of this case that I hope is just a one-off. As for Nick's non sequitur, look, I heard something about a video that was posting. I don't have any first-hand information, but what I did hear or see is someone said that it was something to do with a good friend of Colin Albert's, and that if they played the video, it would be clear that it was not a serious fight. But that's a non sequitur. That has nothing to do with what happened today in the courtroom. And what about Kerry Roberts, who said and was not cross-examined? Here's a non sequitur for you, that Karen Reed called her at 5 in the morning and said, John O'Keefe is dead. That was not cross-examined. That's in evidence.
Kevin, I want to add one more piece here, because as a result of all of this, what we're seeing, we know that Turtle Boy is now facing charges, but something else happened. The DA came out and spoke prior to the trial, another move that created some level of controversy in this case. Let's take a look.
This will be the first statement of its kind in my dozen years as Norfolk District Attorney. The harassment of witnesses in the murder prosecution of Karen Reed is absolutely baseless. The idea that multiple police department, EMTs, fire personnel, the medical examiner, and prosecuting agencies are joined in or taken in by a vast conspiracy should be seen for what it is, completely contrary to the evidence and a desperate attempt to reassign guilt. What is happening to the witnesses, some with no actual involvement in the case, is wrong.
All right, Kevin Lenahan, let me ask you your reaction to this. I think we lost Nick's connection. But Kevin, where do you see the line in all of what has happened in Canton between like free speech, the right to protest, and then crossing that line? Like, do you believe the movement has taken it too far?
Oh, and I've experienced it firsthand. I can even just give you a little personal story going back to last summer. So this was, you know, I started out, I'd never been to Canton. I'm covering this case, trying to be just objective about it. But as I started asking more and more questions, people on the other side were making threats against me. And I got a call from Aiden Kearney, Turtle Boy, who I'd only spoke to once before, saying that Alan Jackson himself wanted to talk to me. He gave me his number. So I texted Alan Jackson saying, this is Kevin from Yellow Cottage Tales, and I'm willing to talk to you, but just understand, I'm always going to be objective and neutral. I'm not on anybody's side. And he texted back, oh, I understand. That's okay. I'll give you a call, which he never did. But understand, my channel was small. My lives, I was getting about 100 people, whereas Turtle Boy's getting 3,000. But I was the only dissenting voice really at that time in any kind of media. And they were going to try to get me on board. So this is just building on what Joe was saying. The idea that this defense team is somehow separate from this mob behavior, no way. They are 100% attached to it at every step of the way. They floated theories to me through the lieutenants. Karen is managing this stuff right from the center. False theories, smearing theories. One of them that I reported on my channel and had to retract until I understood what was going on. They have a lot of tentacles out there. Nick is one of them, but I take Nick at his word. He is not someone that has been ever harassing people or acted indecently. I think he's a good guy, and in no way, he is an exception to the rule.
All right, we lost Nick's connection, but we thank Nick Rocco and, of course, Kevin Lenahan from Yellow Cottage Tales on YouTube and Joseph Krowski Jr. Thank you all so much. We'll see you again, probably tomorrow.